In California today, a high-stakes meeting between President Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping. The summit marks President Xi's first trip to the United States in 6 years and comes amid simmering tensions between Washington and Beijing. The Biden administration has been downplaying expectations for the meeting, but hopes to reestablish at least military-to-military communications and secure a Chinese commitment to crack down on fentanyl. We expect the president to take questions during a news conference in the next hour, but let's discuss what's going on with Democratic Congressman Khanna of California. He serves on the House China Select Committee. Congressman, thanks so much for joining us. I want to get your reaction first to President Biden's comments earlier today. Listen to this.
I think it's paramount that you and I understand each other clearly, leader to leader, with no misconceptions or miscommunication. We have to ensure that competition does not veer into conflict.
What do you make of the two leaders' initial messages that were delivered today?
I thought President Biden was strong but prudent. He's making it clear that there are conflicts. There's a conflict over Taiwan. There's a conflict on human rights with the Uyghurs, with Tibet, with the treatment in Hong Kong, conflict over our trade deficit, massive trade deficit with China. But we have to communicate. We have to have our militaries communicating. And the president, I think, is striking the right balance.
U.S. officials have been saying that there are two likely outcomes of this important summit: restoring military-to-military communications between the U.S. and China, and more Chinese regulation of fentanyl. Does that go far enough in putting the U.S.-China relationship back on track?
It's a first step. I mean, the military-to-military communication is essential, especially with the heightened tensions in the South China Sea and in the Pacific. We don't want an accidental conflict to begin, and it is important that we have that communication like we had at the height of the Cold War with the Soviet Union. The fentanyl crackdown would be a big win for the administration. But there are still outstanding issues of human rights, and there are big issues of our trade deficit, which continues to grow, hollowing out manufacturing here at China's gain. That needs to be addressed.
We're showing our viewers some live pictures coming in now from the summit. You see President Biden, President Xi strolling around a nice area over there. They're having a little private conversation, to be sure. As you know, Congressman, President Biden is expected to press President Xi on persuading Iran to stay out of Israel's war against Hamas. Does China have an incentive to help the U.S. here when mutual trust is clearly on such thin ice, at least right now?
Well, China has an interest because they also need relations in the Middle East to work. They have relations also, as you know, with Saudi Arabia. They want to build relations with other countries in the Middle East. It's in no one's interest for there to be a wider war in the Middle East that would have a catastrophic effect on oil prices, on energy supplies. So I do think here is a place where our interests may align.
As the two leaders were strolling, by the way, President Biden was asked how the meeting went, at least so far, and he gave a thumbs up, two thumbs up, if you will. So at least he's a bit encouraged, at least based on that reaction. As you know, President Biden, on a political issue, is currently losing to Donald Trump in several new polls that have just come out, heightening the possibility of a Trump presidency in 2024, which he's vowing will be tough on China. How challenging is that for President Biden's position in front of China, at least here?
I think foreign policy is actually going to matter, and people are going to say, who do you want in charge of the most powerful nation in the world when you've got a war in the Middle East, right, as we do now, when you have relations with China as you do now? And I think Americans are going to say we trust Biden and President Biden's hand. Of course, it's going to be a tough election, a hard-fought election, but ultimately I think his statesmanship is going to help him prevail.
What do you think President Biden's main message should be in the press conference he's about to have in an hour or so from now?
I think he should talk about the key concessions that he obtained. Hopefully, he did get the concession about fentanyl. That is an enormous issue in the United States. So many deaths because of fentanyl. If he can get China to crackdown that's big. Hopefully he has gotten a commitment on resuming the communications with China and our militaries. And then I think he also needs to be clear about where China needs to improve. He needs to talk about the human rights situation with the Uyghurs, with Tibet, with Hong Kong, and he needs to make it clear that America is not going to continue the colossal mistake of offshoring. China needs to play fair. They need to allow America to make things again and not have these massive trade deficits.
Democratic Congressman Khanna, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.